All right, good morning. This is another flip classroom for you. Today, the unit is Unit 3. It's adding and subtracting decimals. Today's lesson, we're going to do 3.1, and that is exploring decimals up to the thousandths place. So we're going to talk about that. You've already had a quick lesson on place value to the thousandths place and kind of helping you understand parts of a whole. You know, decimals are essentially fractions or less than a whole number. And we talked with money to explain the tenths, and we talked pennies to talk about the hundredths, and then we also talked about how the thousands are. We don't have money to represent thousands, but Go Math's going to show you a version of how to represent thousands place. Okay. So if you open up your book to lesson 3.1, that is page 151, okay? And we are going to work our way through this. The materials you're going to need for this is a graph paper, pencil, possibly a ruler here, and then your Go Math book, obviously. So let's get started. So the thousands are smaller parts than hundredths. If 1/100th is divided into 10 equal parts, each part is 1/1000. So each time you work your way from the tenths to the hundredths to the thousandths, you're splitting that up into 10 equal, each of those pieces into 10 more equal parts. You're getting smaller. You're moving away from the decimal point. So here, I'm going to flip back and forth. Here you need to create your grid. So I need you to take your, pause this when I'm done giving directions. I need you to take your ruler and I need you to connect these lines. This grid should be a 10 by 10 grid. Okay, so pause that now, do it, and then press play again. Okay, so now you should have your grid. I didn't fill mine out. I'm going to use mine on a different thing. We're going to work through A, B, and C here to represent tenths, hundreds, and thousands. So it says divide the larger square into 10 equal columns or rectangles. Shade one rectangle. What part of the whole is shaded? Is the shaded rectangle. Write the part as a decimal. Okay? So what it's asking you to do here is, give me 1 second. Okay? What they're asking you to do is they are asking you to show one rectangle, one version of this. Let me get this going here. Okay? So you have a 10 by 10 square. All right? So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. They're asking you to shade in one rectangle, okay? A column, if you will. Okay? So that is what you're shading. Okay? That represents one column out of how many columns? Well, we've got a column 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. 10 columns. So this actually represents 1 out of 10th. That's a tenth. That is the same as a dime. It takes 10 dimes, right, to equal a whole. 1/10 is also equal to point. It's also equal to, if I can get this, 0.1. Okay, that is 1/10. Sound good? Okay, so then it asks you to complete the whole chart. So instead of Okay, so then it says divide each rectangle, so each of those rectangles into 10 equal squares. So you should have what looks like a hundreds grid. Okay, same thing. You should have a hundreds chart that has a 10 by 10 in little squares. Okay, okay, and each of these little squares inside that box represent a piece, a part of a whole. And you know 10 by 10, how many pieces do you have? We know we have 100 pieces. And then it asks you just to shade in one little guy. Okay? That represents a fraction, a part of a whole, right? It represents 1 out of 100, or a hundredth, which is also equal to, okay? Because we don't have a tens, that's why we put it, we don't have a tenths there. We have a hundredth. So it's 0.01, 1/100th. Okay, we don't have a 10, we have a part of a 10. We have 1/10 of 10, or 1/100th. Okay, now comes a little tricky piece here. We are going to talk about the thousandths. Okay, the thousandths is like what your book shows. It shows this piece here being cut up into 10 pieces. That 1/100th, that tiny little square, this little guy right here being cut up into 10 pieces. And they kind of have a little picture like that. Mine's disgusting, I apologize. But there's 10 pieces there. So 1/1000th is literally 1/10 of 1/100th. It's one little piece of this, okay, of your 1/10. Okay, that's also like writing, we said it's 1,000, and there's one of them, and we know that's going to look like 0.001. Okay, so the trick is the further away we get from the decimal, the smaller our number's getting. Okay, the closer we get to the decimal, the closer are we getting to a whole number. All right. So that's our visual aid today to show you what 1/10, 1/100th, and 1/1000th looks like. Okay, let me come on back here. Okay, so here we did A, we did B, and we did C. It says use a third color to shade in one rectangle, and you guys can do that down here to represent that one piece, which is that thousandths we talked about. So all we're doing is we're taking pieces and we're cutting them up into tenths. So 1/10th is one of these. And then if we want 100th, we're taking all those and we're cutting those up. And then when we want 1,000ths, we're taking one of these little pieces and we're cutting that into 10 pieces. So it just keeps getting one piece broken up into a smaller piece. Okay? All right, let's move on. Okay, the next thing I want to talk with you guys about is we're going to jump on down here and we're going to talk about making connections. Okay? They're going to have some questions that are going to ask you a number, and then they're going to see if you can figure out what the number is 10 times as much or 1/10 of that number. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about this. We're going to come on down here. It says the relationship of a digit in different place value positions is the same with decimals as it is with whole numbers. So if we go 10 times a number, we know we're going to move up a place value, right? Decimals aren't any different. The only thing is now when we go backwards, we're going to talk fractions. We know that already, okay? We know that already. We did that in chapter 1. All we're doing now is applying that concept to decimals, okay? You can use the understanding of place value patterns and place value chart to write decimals that are 10 times as much or 1/10 of a decimal, okay? So let's come on down here. It gives you a step-by-step process. I love it. It says write the given decimal in a place value chart. So let's start with 3, it's not tenths, it's hundredths, 3/100ths, okay? Then it says use the place value chart to write a decimal that is 10 times as much as the given decimal. All right, we can do that too. So what this says now is we are going to go 10 times as much as 3/10. So we want this number to get larger. And like we talked about, that means we want this 3 to become closer to the decimal. Okay, so we want to move our decimal closer to the 3. All right, so if I'm going to move it on down here. So if it's 0.03 and we want to go 10 times larger, it is 1 hop. So our new number is 0.3. Okay, that is 3/10. Tenths are larger than hundredths. You would want 3/10 of a pizza rather than 3/100ths of a pizza. It is larger. We are bringing that number closer to the decimal. Now, if we want our number to get, we want to know what is 1/10 of 3/100ths, it's going to get smaller. To get smaller, it needs to go further away. Does that make sense? So we're actually going to hop one place to the left and plug in our 0. Okay? So when you're talking decimals, if you want the number, if you're going 10 times as much, you want that number to get closer to the decimal, which means you are going to hop to the right. If you want it to get larger, or smaller, I'm sorry, you want it to go further away from the decimal, so you're going to go to the left. Okay? So let's do the next one. We have 1/10. What is 10 times more than 1/10? Well, we said we want the decimal to, we want it to get closer. So 1/10, we said we're going to move to the right one, right? Because we want to get closer. Boom. So we went from 1/10 to 1 whole. See that? And now if we wanted to get smaller, we're going to go from 1/10. And we said we want to move, if we get smaller, we go to the left. Now we go to 1/100. Okay? Now, let's try the next one. All right. We have 7/100ths. 10 times as much. One hop to the right, because we wanted to get closer to our decimal. So that is 7/10. And we want to know 1/10 of 7/100ths. We know that we need to go to the left, one hop, because we want it to get smaller, and we plug in our 0. Okay? So remember the rules. If you need your number to get larger, 10 times as much, you need to bring that decimal closer to your number. So you're going to the right. And if you're going to 1/10 of something, it's further away. Okay? And that is one hop to the left. Okay? All right, let's come on back here. All right, so those are the two major concepts today. You guys are going to be in charge of the following page, 153, okay? So you guys are going to be in charge of writing decimals shown through the figure, all right? So I see some things here. Remember, this represents the thousandths. This is showing you that this is split up. So this one's going to have some thousandths. It also has some tens in there. Look at that. It has some tens. So anytime an entire column is filled in, it's going to be a tenth. So how many tenths do we have here? I'll do the first one with you. Okay? And then I'm going to let you guys rock and roll on your own. So we have 1/10, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 tenths. So boom, we're going to put our decimal. How many of the hundredths? So you got to count this one little column. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 of those. And then how many of the thousands? Ooh, I got to blow that sucker up. I can't really see. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay. 5 1,000ths. Okay. So this number is 665 thousandths. All right. So make sure you count your blocks first, your whole columns first for the tenths, then the hundredths, then the thousands. Okay. Then the last thing you're going to do is you're going to come down here, and I'd like you to fill these charts out. Okay. 9 through 16. Remember, it wants 10 times as much. If you wanted to get bigger, you got to hop to the right. If you needed to get 1/10 smaller, you got to hop to the left. All right. Remember, a fraction's going to make the number smaller. So you need that number further away from the decimal point. Okay. When you're done with these, you guys need to fill out your exit ticket. Your exit ticket is on your assignment in the Google Classroom. Okay. It's a quick assignment. It's your first post. I'm giving you the green light to post something. So make sure you do that correctly. Read the directions carefully, and then you'll be ready to move on to 3.2 tomorrow. All right, guys. Thanks. Good luck.